Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we really plunge into source material, pull out the best insights, those surprising facts, the things that just genuinely help you feel more informed.
hmm
And today we're diving into excerpts from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff at Work, Simple Ways to Minimize Stress and Conflict.
A classic.
It is. Our mission here with this deep dive is really to uncover the practical wisdom in these pages. Find some new ways maybe for you to navigate the daily challenges of work life. With less stress, maybe more ease, even a bit more joy.
Yeah, sort of a shortcut to handling those workplace hurdles with a bit more grace.
Exactly.
And the real promise from this material, it's fascinating. It's just that as you get better at not sweating the small stuff,
Uh-huh.
more and more of what used to feel really overwhelming at work just starts to become small stuff.
Right.
So the aim isn't just less stress, honestly. It's about having more fun. It's this shift, you see, not from problems disappearing, but from experiencing them fundamentally differently.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. So it's not about the external conditions magically changing around you.
No, not at all.
It's more an internal transformation in how we react, moving away from that sort of knee-jerk negativity
Mhm.
towards something calmer, maybe more graceful.
That's it, precisely.
Yeah.
What's really intriguing here is this idea of daring to be happy.
Daring to be happy. I like that.
Yeah. The source basically proposes that if you actually allow yourself to be happy, your work can shift. It can go from just being a chore
Hmm.
into, well, they call it an extraordinary adventure.
Wow. That sounds ambitious for some work days.
Well, yeah, but it's not just, wishful thinking.
Mm.
This kind of deliberate attitude shift, choosing your internal state.
Mm-hmm.
It's presented as a direct route to stress reduction. You stop waiting for perfect conditions just to feel okay.
That makes perfect sense. And part of cultivating that internal world seems to be releasing the need to control everything.
Oh, definitely.
The source points out it's not just about micromanaging people, but this deeper need to have your environment and maybe critically other people's behavior line up exactly with your expectations.
Right. That's a huge source of sweating the small stuff, isn't it? When others don't do what you think they should.
Absolutely.
And just think about the sheer waste of energy on things like, say, complaining.
Uh-huh.
The source shares this really striking example. Two coworkers, right? Facing a report deadline, less than 2 hours away.
Okay. Crunch time.
Serious crunch time. But instead of working, they spent nearly a full hour just complaining about how little time they had.
No. I can picture that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The deadline was a pressure point, sure, but the stress wasn't just the deadline. It was the obsessive thinking, the complaining about it. That internal churn just creates its own anxiety.
Oh, I've definitely seen that happen. It's like talking yourself into failure before you even start.
Exactly.
And that complaining, it loops right into anticipating problems, doesn't it? Like deciding tonight, oh, tomorrow's going to be exhausting before today's even done.
Yes. You're convincing yourself of future misery.
Right.
And the antidote isn't some magic fix for endless energy. The source suggests a simpler reframing.
Okay.
Get the sleep you can when you can.
Okay.
And be genuinely grateful for whatever amount you actually get. It's about making peace with the reality of the moment rather than, mentally writing this whole script for a terrible day tomorrow.
And that accepting the reality, that applies to so many frustrating things like bureaucracy. That's a big one.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Yes. The source is pretty blunt about it. You can rail against bureaucracy. You can play out all these imaginary battles in your head, stress yourself ragged.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, you still have to navigate it. So the path of least stress, it's making peace with its existence.
Okay.
There's this story of Joe. His small business was mistakenly declared closed by the government.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Nightmare scenario. It took him 6 months to fix.
Mm.
But his mindset was key. He kept saying, I know there is a solution here, and I know this will be resolved.
So he accepted the mess, but kept the faith.
Exactly. He accepted the current reality, the mess, but maintained faith in the eventual outcome. Patience, combined with persistence, it often wins out over that frantic fighting.
It seems like once you recognize these inevitable frustrations, getting upset by them feels less like a surprise and more, almost foolish, like the source suggests.
Right.
They mention these predictable stressors in certain industries, those built-in delays, maybe waiting on suppliers, waiting for approvals. You know they're probably coming, so why let the predictable arrival ruin your day every single time?
Precisely. You sort of build those allowances into your mental model of how work actually flows.
Okay.
And speaking of inevitability, the source shares this, unforgettable story of the author's own travel nightmare.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
Get this. Bad traffic, spilled coffee and another drink all over himself,
Huh.
ruined his briefcase, missed his connecting flight, and missed the event he was traveling all that way to speak at.
Wow. That's a truly bad day.
That's a bad day. But the point isn't that you can somehow prevent days like that they happen, right?
Right.
The insight is in how you respond. You accept the inevitability. Maybe you try to find some humor in the sheer absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
And you just refuse to take yourself or the situation so seriously that it completely breaks you down.
That acceptance of imperfection, it's tough. But it makes so much sense for lowering stress. And it seems to apply really well to dealing with incompetence, which the source says point blank will happen.
It will. Someone will drop the ball or make a mistake. It's guaranteed.
So what's the advice?
Well, losing your cool won't fix it, obviously. And it just ramps up your own stress.
Yeah.
So the strategy here is more like take it in stride, do what you reasonably can to rectify the situation.
Okay.
And then this is the crucial part. You have to let it go. Focus your energy on the majority of things and people that are going well.
Let it go. Easier said than done sometimes.
Always. But this links directly to embracing chaos itself. Yeah, the source describes chaos as basically a law of nature in the workplace. It's going to be there.
Okay.
So the real trick isn't trying to make chaos disappear, because you can't. It's learning to surrender to it instead of constantly struggling against it.
Surrender to chaos? How does that look?
It's about looking at it with a sense of equanimity, perspective, almost like greeting an old, slightly annoying friend. Ooh, there it is again.
Huh. Okay.
You just stop fighting the things that deep down you know you cannot control.
A lot of this really does seem to boil down to your internal perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
The source challenges you to own the fact that your job ultimately is your choice.
Even if the circumstances feel incredibly difficult, seeing it as a choice is presented as really empowering.
How so?
Well, it gives the example of Chris, working brutal 12-hour days. He felt trapped, but the source reframes it. He chose that rather than face the risk and uncertainty of finding a new job.
Okay. That's a different lens.
It is. And then there's Megan, a single mom, who felt victimized by her situation until she acknowledged she was the choice maker. That shift allowed her to pursue her dream. That move from I have to I choose to, or even I get to. It's incredibly powerful.
That perspective shift changes your whole relationship with the work, I imagine.
Completely.
Yeah.
And it connects to avoiding living in some imagined future.
What do you mean?
So much stress comes from postponing happiness, right? Believing things like, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or life will finally be easy if I just get through this one project.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all do it. But the source argues that happiness is actually inherent in the journey itself. It's not some destination you finally arrive at. You find peace, you reduce stress by being fully engaged and, well, making the best the step you're on right now.
Being engaged in the moment. The source also talks about competing from the heart. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It's a fascinating idea, actually. It's not about that desperate kind of ego-driven need to win at all costs. It's more about loving the process,
Yeah.
being fully immersed in the work itself, in the challenge, maybe the creative act. When you compete from the heart, winning sort of becomes secondary to the pure enjoyment and engagement of that moment.
And the source suggests you can actually be successful and still be, gentle, resilient, a good sport, not totally attached to the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that detachment from the outcome, that ability to compete from the heart, it actually conserves immense energy. It helps you bounce back much more quickly when things inevitably don't go your way.
Bouncing back definitely requires forgiving yourself, which the source also emphasizes, right?
Oh, absolutely critical. Mistakes are just part of the human condition. None of us got a manual for life or work.
Sure.
The source includes this wonderfully human anecdote about the author saying he's had lots of practice forgiving himself because, well, he's made so many mistakes.
Relatable.
Totally. There's also the story of Jack the broker who convinced a client not to invest in Intel years ago. Ouch.
Oh, wow. Hindsight.
Yeah. Exactly. Hindsight is 20/20. But in the moment, with no crystal ball, you make the best call you can. The insight here is that most workplace mistakes, they aren't life or death catastrophes.
Right.
They're usually small stuff that causes maybe inconvenience or expense, but they aren't worth the immense stress and self-recrimination we often pile on.
And one of the biggest drivers of that self-recrimination and just a huge source of stress in general is our ego, isn't it? The source calls it an enormous contributor.
It really is that constant pressure, To prove yourself, comparing yourself to others all the time, keeping score, agonizing over what other people think, it just drains incredible amounts of energy.
So how do you ease off the ego? Sounds tricky.
It's not a quick fix, for sure. The source suggests it's more of a gentle, intentional process. It involves humility, patience. You kind of catch yourself when you're in that proving mode. And you gently, kindly remind yourself to just step back. But the reported benefits are huge. Feeling lighter, having more energy, becoming more genuinely interested in other people. And paradoxically, you often end up receiving more positive attention because you're not so desperately seeking it out.
Okay, so controlling our internal state is absolutely foundational. But how does that then impact how we interact with others? Because that's where so much workplace stress seems to originate.
Good question.
The source has a lot to say on communication. We already touched on stopping complaining, but what about other traps we fall into?
Well, the source adds avoiding comments that are just likely to spiral into gossip or, unproductive chatter.
Right.
There's an example of a woman just wanting a quiet evening at home. On her way out, she makes one casual comment and gets pulled into this lengthy, draining conversation she didn't want. Or the author himself admitting he extends phone calls unnecessarily just by asking that one last question. It's about being mindful of how our words create these little waves.
That simple awareness, it makes a difference. And the source talks about just biting your tongue.
Yeah. A seemingly simple act, but incredibly powerful. The example given is a woman about to yell at her coworker, "You are the worst listener."
Ooh, tense.
Very. But the source suggested just a brief, gentle pause before reacting. It allows your own innate wisdom to maybe find a better, less confrontational way to express your frustration or your needs.
Right.
That pause saves you from escalating the conflict and all the stress that comes with that escalation.
It seems so obvious reading it, but it's incredibly hard to do in the heat of the moment. Another simple but powerful one the source highlights, just being friendly.
It sounds basic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Think about it. The source uses the example of receptionists.
Okay.
They often hold a lot of informal power in an office, right? Managing calls, messages, visitors.
Yep.
Being genuinely friendly ensures you get friendly hellos back, your calls get screened effectively, messages actually get passed on, maybe you get helpful reminders. It helps you avoid the stress of those lost messages or forgotten meetings that can happen if you're perceived as difficult or unfriendly.
And that applies beyond receptionists, surely.
Oh, absolutely. The principle extends to everyone, flight attendants, people waiting in lines with you, service staff. A little bit of friendliness really does go a long way.
And connected right to that is offering genuine appreciation.
Yes, the source is clear. It feels good to both the giver and the receiver, but maybe more importantly, it helps other people feel seen. It encourages them to bring their best selves to the table.
Makes sense.
The author shares a really powerful anecdote about consciously focusing on appreciating someone in a difficult working relationship and how it actually transformed the dynamic over time.
Wow.
Yeah. The core idea is that doing the right thing, like showing appreciation, it often creates this positive ripple effect that can eventually benefit you, even if that's not your primary motive for doing it.
That resonates. And the source has a pretty striking example about maintaining respect, even when you're justifiably angry.
Yes, the car wash manager story. It's a good one. A customer was yelling really aggressively about some dog hair still in their car after the wash.
Okay.
The manager calmly offered to clean it again himself. Then he looked the customer in the eye and calmly asked, "What makes you think you have the right to speak to me?" in that harsh, demanding manner.
Whoa. Gutsy.
It is, but it shows you can address the issue, solve the problem, while simultaneously setting a boundary and maintaining your own dignity and the expectation of respect. It diffuses your own stress because you respond with calm authority rather than just reacting with anger.
That leads nicely into building rapport, which the source really emphasizes is crucial but often overlooked.
Very true. And the source gives practical advice here. Assume you don't automatically have rapport with someone new or even someone you know, and actually make the effort to create or recreate it. Be genuinely interested in listening. Be respectful. Be sincere. The goal is to make the other person feel like, the most important person in the room for that brief interaction.
Is there an example of that?
Yeah, the story about the overbooked hotel. The author, through patience and respect with the staff, ended up getting the best suite in the place.
Nice.
While another customer, who was being really demanding and impatient, got absolutely nothing. It's a perfect illustration. Rapport and respect can open doors that impatience and demands often just slam shut.
So when issues do inevitably come up, the source suggests using gentle confrontation instead of just avoiding it, or worse, going to war over it.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be this aggressive battle. The advice is to approach issues calmly, sort of from the heart, ideally when you're not in the heat of anger or feeling super stressed.
Right.
Most people, the source argues, when they're faced with a calm, reasonable person, will respond more reasonably themselves. It leads to far better outcomes, and crucially, it keeps your stress levels way down compared to either bottling things up or just exploding.
And key to all of this interaction advice seems to be seeing the human being behind the job title.
Absolutely. The source is really firm on this. Your boss, the receptionist, the flight attendant, the client you're dealing with, they are all human beings. They have their own lives, their own worries, insecurities, struggles, just like you do.
Remembering that we're all in this together kind of idea.
Precisely. It helps you approach interactions with more empathy, less judgment, and that inherently reduces your own frustration and stress.
That perspective must help manage expectations too. The source says we basically have to accept that someone, somewhere, is almost always going to be mad at you or disappointed in you at work.
Yeah, that's a tough one to swallow, but it's often true, isn't it? Especially when you have multiple demands on your time and resources, it's simply impossible to please everyone all the time.
So don't take it personally.
Exactly. The source reminds us it's usually not personal. It's just the reality of conflicting needs and limited resources. Accepting this reality reduces the stress of constantly trying to be perfect or please every single person.
And it's also about lowering expectations about situations, but not lowering your actual standards for your own work, right? There's a distinction there.
Precisely. A very important distinction. This source shares Melissa's story. She found her job incredibly stressful, just felt overwhelmed, until she consciously learned to take things more in stride. She gained perspective by lowering her expectations about how smooth or perfect things should be all the time.
And that helped.
It did. That shift actually freed up her mental energy and gave her perspective, which, interestingly, ultimately led to her getting promotions. Just making allowances for the inevitable bad moods, the mistakes, the system glitches, it conserves tremendous energy.
And finally, on the interaction front, becoming less attached to the outcome when you make requests, that sounds important too.
Yeah. The source advises basically depersonalizing being turned down. So often it has absolutely nothing to do with you personally.
Right.
It's about budget constraints or other priorities the company has or internal politics you know nothing about. The author's perspective on, say, unreturned calls or letters is key here. You keep putting yourself out there, you keep trying,
Okay.
but you detach from the specific outcome of any single request. If it's meant to happen, maybe it will. If not, that's okay too. You just move on to the next opportunity without carrying that rejection personally.
These are fantastic insights for managing the whole relational side of work stress. Let's shift gears now, though, to some of the really practical habits and actions the source suggests. Things you can do to modify your routine and reclaim some energy.
Great. Yes, there are quite a few.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful is intentionally having no phone time.
The phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Consciously turning off the ringer, putting it away, avoiding those constant distractions.
But what if your job requires you to be on the phone?
The source acknowledges that. Sure, some jobs are highly phone dependent. But even then, it suggests you can find windows. Maybe arrive a bit early before the calls start, use your lunch break, dedicate specific blocks of time where you try to minimize it. The point is creating intentional quiet space, even small pockets of it.
Okay. And something as seemingly simple as just being on time. How does that fit in?
Yes. The source points out that the stress of rushing and being late, it impacts you first and foremost. But it also affects those who are waiting for you, right? It shows a lack of respect for their time.
Sure.
So being on time isn't just courteous. It actually allows for these little moments of calm transition between tasks. Maybe even a bit of reflection or an unexpected idea, which gets completely squeezed out when you're constantly frazzled and arriving late.
And you can't always blame traffic.
Well, the source argues that most lateness isn't actually unavoidable, horrible traffic. It's usually preventable with a bit more planning.
Fair point. Another practical one mentioned, finishing what you start. The stress of having countless tasks almost done, it just weighs on you. It creates mental clutter. And it can be really irritating to others who might be waiting on you to complete your part.
So the advice is simple.
Very simple. Commit to that final completion step for tasks. See them through.
And related to that, the idea of getting it over with.
Yes. Doing the most difficult or uncomfortable tasks first. Tackling the thing you dread the most at the beginning of the day.
Why is that so effective?
The source makes a pretty bold claim here, actually. It says this simple habit can potentially save you thousands of hours of unnecessary stressful or worrisome thinking.
Thousands of hours. Wow.
Yeah. You tackle the dreaded thing, you breathe that huge sigh of relief, and the rest of your day just feels lighter, less burdened.
That feels incredibly intuitive, that sense of relief after finishing something you dreaded. And along with tackling tasks efficiently, the source talks about stopping the frantic pace, literally stopping scrambling.
Right. We often feel like we only have two speeds at work. Fast and faster.
The source advocates for consciously slowing down your actions, even slowing down your thinking.
But doesn't that make you less productive?
Not necessarily. This deliberate slowing isn't about being lazy or less productive. The argument is it actually helps you become more relaxed, regain composure, see the bigger picture, think more clearly, and ultimately be more effective, not less.
Okay, that makes sense. And to stop scrambling, you often probably need to learn to say no more often.
Without guilt. That's the key part. The source says saying yes too often is pretty much a guaranteed path to feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, and eventually resentful.
You feel like a victim.
Right. You might feel like a victim of too many demands, but the source kind of argues you've often created that mess yourself, at least partly, by not setting clear boundaries and just saying no more often when you needed to.
It sounds like it might be time for an honest inventory of our daily habits and rituals then.
Absolutely. The source lists a bunch of potential culprits.
Yeah.
Rushing frantically in the morning, eating those heavy lunches that make you sleepy, your commute choices, relying too much on caffeine or maybe after-work drinks just to cope, starting the day grumpy every day, even stress-inducing reading habits like doom-scrolling news before bed. Taking a hard, honest look at these ingrained patterns and being willing to consciously change just a few of them can significantly reduce your overall background stress levels.
A really major point the source addresses is burnout prevention, which feels incredibly relevant for so many people today.
It is. It's an enormous problem. And the source's primary strategy isn't necessarily about finding a magical new job, but about cultivating a robust, fulfilling life outside of work.
Like what?
Things like having outside interests you care about, getting regular exercise, maybe meditation or mindfulness, nurturing genuine connections with friends, making time for dedicated time alone.
Those things often feel like the first to go when work gets busy.
They do. But the story of Andrew in the source really drives this home. He quit his high-pressure job, totally burned out. He spent time building a fulfilling life, outside work, hobbies, relationships, balance.
And
Then he actually went back to his old job. And he realized the career itself wasn't the core problem. It was his complete lack of balance around the career.
Wow. So the I don't have time excuse doesn't fly.
The source directly challenges that excuse. It calls saying, I don't have time for these restorative things, basically short-term thinking, that inevitably leads to long-term misery and burnout.
Okay, point taken. Our physical space matters too, right?
Yeah.
The source mentions brightening up your working environment.
Yeah, it acknowledges it won't eliminate all stress, of course not. But since you spend so much time there, making your workspace a more pleasant place is seen as a worthwhile investment in yourself.
What kind of things?
Oh, simple ideas. Photos of loved ones or happy memories, maybe a plant or two, colorful objects, things that bring you a sense of peace or joy when you look at them. Even small touches can make a surprising difference to your mood over time.
And taking simple short breaks throughout the day.
Crucial. Absolutely crucial. Just a few minutes, maybe every hour or so, to step away, take a few deep breaths, stretch, clear your head.
Like a reset button.
Exactly. The source calls it a reset button. It helps you return to your work feeling more focused, maybe a bit more enthusiastic, and it can even spark creativity sometimes. It reinforces that whole idea that working smarter, not just longer or harder, is really key to managing stress effectively.
That idea of working smarter seems to connect to another point. Taking an inventory of what truly nourishes you versus what just drains you.
Precisely. When you're caught up in that whirlwind of busyness day after day, it's so easy to lose sight of the things that genuinely replenish your energy and your spirit, your deeper priorities. The source suggests that getting lost in endless routine and busyness, without that awareness of what truly nourishes you, is basically a recipe for frustration and eventual burnout.
And perhaps the most counterintuitive practical habit the source suggests, spending 10 minutes a day doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that one throws people. You'd think when you're stressed and totally overwhelmed, the absolute last thing you should do is stop moving.
Right. Feels like wasting time.
But the source argues it's precisely because you're so busy that this is valuable. It's not about being lazy, it's a deliberate mental reset. It helps prevent you from hitting a wall or completely falling apart when those unexpected glitches and problems inevitably occur later in the day.
So it could actually be productive.
The source provocatively suggests it might just be the most productive 10 minutes of your entire day. Food for thought.
That really does flip the script on conventional productivity ideas, doesn't it? Okay, let's move into another aspect the source explores, maybe a slightly deeper level. Presence and wisdom, the power of simply being in the moment.
Yes, this is moving towards a different kind of skill. The source talks about being truly present in something mundane, like a meeting.
How many of us drift off in meetings?
Exactly. Instead of mentally planning your grocery list or replaying some past interaction, the idea is to fully absorb yourself in what's happening right now. Listen intently. Approach it with what they call a beginner's mind, open to finding some new wisdom or insight, even in a routine meeting,
It could certainly make meetings more interesting, if nothing else.
and potentially more productive too.
Yeah.
And linked to that presence, when you feel that sense of overwhelm starting to creep in, the source suggests asking yourself a simple question: what am I doing with this moment?
Okay, what am I doing with this moment? What does that help you see?
It's a powerful little check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Are you using this present moment to just dwell on the stress, to justify why you're upset, to mentally reinforce all the negativity? Or are you consciously using this moment to maybe focus on finding a solution, or even just finding something small to appreciate or enjoy right now? The source suggests that when you're consciously choosing to make the best of the present moment, you're far less likely to get pulled into sweating all the small stuff from the past or worrying about the future.
That sounds like staying close to your center, an idea mentioned.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
It's that ability to recognize stressful, noisy thinking when it arises and consciously let it go, returning your attention to a state of inner peace or calm. It's often about recognizing what not to do mentally, not letting your thoughts just automatically drift off to deadlines, worries, or anticipating negative interactions. You gently guide your mind back.
And the source introduces a concept called neutral thinking. What's that about?
This is about intentionally quieting that busy, analytical part of your mind that's always trying to force answers or control everything.
Okay.
It's more like allowing your deeper wisdom, your intuition, to surface naturally, like letting soup simmer gently on the stove instead of boiling it furiously.
When would you use that?
The source suggests this state is incredibly powerful when you feel stuck on a problem or particularly stressed, or when you need creative insights. It provides a way to relax into finding the answer, rather than trying to stress your way towards it.
Which leads neatly to the final point in this particular section, backing off when you just don't know what to do.
Right. Our instinct is often to just double down, isn't it?
Right.
Think harder, try harder, force a solution.
Yeah, push through.
But the source advises the exact opposite. Gently ease off. Step back mentally. Let go of the struggle for a bit. This allows your innate intelligence and wisdom, which can actually be obstructed by all that pressure and frantic effort, to come into play and perhaps offer a solution you couldn't see before.
Bringing all these different ideas together then, the source offers something called the 3 R's.
Yes. Responsive, receptive, and reasonable.
Okay. Responsive, receptive, reasonable.
Responsive, receptive, reasonable. The source presents striving for these qualities.
Yeah.
Being able to respond calmly rather than just react emotionally, being open and receptive to new information or different perspectives, and maintaining a generally reasonable outlook. These are seen as foundational principles. They help everything else kind of fall into place, leading you towards being less reactive and hopefully genuinely happier at work.
And there's a really beautiful overarching principle the source discusses too, about creating a bridge between your spirituality, whatever that means to you, and your actual work life.
Yes, this means consciously bringing your core values, things like kindness, patience, honesty, generosity, compassion, into your daily interactions and decisions at work.
How does that play out practically?
Well, treating everyone with respect, even when you're faced with difficult tasks, like maybe needing to give someone negative feedback, or even letting someone go. The idea is to do these things from a place of genuine care and respect, rather than just anger or cold detachment. It reminds you of a potentially higher purpose to your work and helps put those daily frustrations into a much larger, maybe more meaningful context.
related to that sense of purpose, the source mentions giving to charity through your business.
It does. It's presented as a way to give your business or even just your role within a larger company a kind of service-oriented focus beyond just profit.
What are the benefits?
Well, it's often deeply satisfying personally. It can act as an incentive to do well financially so you can give more. It makes you a positive role model. And it provides a contribution you can be genuinely proud of. The source really encourages exploring this, even if you work within a large corporate structure, maybe finding ways to champion charitable initiatives.
And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from just putting positive values in, the source has some very strong words about, quote, never again backstab.
Yes, it sounds harsh, doesn't it? But the message is clear and very practical. Backstabbing is just terrible behavior.
Obviously.
Right. But beyond the ethics, it makes you look bad and fundamentally untrustworthy. It's disingenuous. It creates immense stress for everyone involved. And critically, people know. If you'll do it to someone else, you'll probably do it to them eventually.
So it's just bad strategy.
The source frames it simply as highly counterproductive, a huge creator of unnecessary stress, conflict, and broken trust in the workplace. Just don't do it.
Bringing it back to our internal world one last time,
Yeah.
the source really emphasizes the power of our thoughts. This seems central.
It's absolutely fundamental to the whole philosophy. Thoughts, the source says, are just mental images or ideas. They don't have any inherent power to actually create stress unless you give them your consent, your belief.
Can you give an example?
They use that classic example of anticipating a horrible commute before you even leave the house. You're thinking, oh gosh, the traffic's going to be awful. It's going to be a terrible drive.
Right.
You're basically having a bad day before your day has even properly begun, simply because of your thoughts about it.
And so what's the advice?
Catch yourself in those negative thought loops. Recognize them for what they are, just thoughts. Whoops, there I go again. And then gently try to reframe them, or at least not buy into them so fully. Because your expectations, which are fueled by your thoughts, tend to become your reality much of the time.
Which ultimately leads us back full circle almost to that idea of surrendering to the way things are.
Exactly. Small stuff will happen. Life and work will have conflicts and demands and frustrations. The source argues that constantly demanding life be different, demanding things be perfectly smooth in order for you to feel in control. Well, that's ultimately a losing battle.
So where does the real control come from?
The real control, paradoxically, comes not from forcing external circumstances to be perfect, but from surrendering to the reality of how things actually are, imperfections and all. It's in that surrender, that acceptance, that the things that used to drive you crazy start to lose their power over you.
Wow. We have covered so much ground today, pulling from this source material. Everything from, shifting our basic mindset and letting go of control, right through to very practical daily habits, and even finding deeper wisdom. There are just so many strategies here for minimizing stress at work.
There really are. And what stands out to me looking back over it all is that recurring theme. These aren't usually about massive, sweeping, life-altering changes.
No.
Often they're deceptively simple shifts in perspective, slight adjustments to habits you already have, and most importantly, consciously choosing how you respond to things. These small changes, when you practice them consistently, they really accumulate. They can add up to a significant reduction in stress and hopefully a lot more ease in your day-to-day work life. The power truly lies in how you choose to show up each day.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. It's been really insightful.
My pleasure. And as you, the listener, think about everything we've explored from don't sweat the small stuff at work, here's maybe a final thought to carry with you. All these different ideas and strategies we discussed today, which one resonates most deeply with you right here, right now? What single, small, manageable step based on just that one idea could you commit to taking today, maybe even in the next hour or two, to make just a tiny but deliberate positive dent in the stress you experience at work? Something to consider as you go about the rest of your day.